In the world's greatest country, in its most pivotal state, lies Pennsylvania's Lehigh Valley, an economic hub that's as vibrant as it is ideologically eclectic. Its just over 700,000 residents will play a critical role in deciding the course of American leadership and thereby the world. Who are the thinkers, workers, and leaders that will decide our collective fate? Join me, Moshe Kurtz, as I walk through the valley and find out. Thank you, my friends, for joining me today as I walk through the valley with Mr. Bradley Merkl-Gump, who teaches 8th grade history and civics at the Perkiomen Valley School District and is running in the Democratic primary for Pennsylvania's state's 16th Senate District. Welcome on the show, Bradley.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. And don't forget, also a Pennridge School Board Director.
Oh, wow. So this is not going to be your first foray into community service and politics, right?
Absolutely not. Currently unpaid civic servant. Fabulous.
Now, here's what I'm wondering. You teach middle school.
Yes, I do.
You are a brave man. If somebody's able to handle middle schoolers, God knows you're ready to handle anything.
You know, I have been wondering if handling middle schoolers and handling senators might just be the same skill set. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see.
We'll have to find out. But speaking of which, are your students aware? Have you been able to hide your campaign from your students? Is it affecting the classroom at all?
I had managed to hide the campaign for a really long time. They knew that for some reason Mr. Merkl-Gump was coming to school a little more tired than usual for a hot minute. I have recently found out that apparently, yes, the student body is now aware and actively talking about it at the high school, because I got a few emails from some former students letting me know how happy and proud they are.
Mm-hmm. Now, we recently covered the PA 7 congressional race. That's a federal race. It's a little bit higher profile. I like what we're doing. We're looking at something that's more of a local race. So for our listeners that are not familiar with the 16th Senate District of the State Senate in Pennsylvania, can you tell us about the nature of it and why you are running for this office?
So it is parts of Bucks and Lehigh County. Imagine for a moment somebody wanted to make a safe district for someone. For no particular reason, we'll call him Pat Brown. And so what they did was they took Upper Bucks County and then took a scalpel and sort of zigzagged through Lehigh County. That is now SD 16 here in this area. And as per why I'm running, frankly, life is hard right now for a lot of us. We see our paychecks go less and less far. Life keeps getting more and more expensive. Constantly, I'm wondering if we are, in my house, one repair away from just not being able to afford our bills. Mm. We need somebody who understands what the lived experience of Pennsylvanians is like, not just intellectually, but because they're living it every day, that creates that motivation to really make life better for everybody.
Absolutely. So as a public school teacher, you're not in a private equity firm. You're living kind of the typical day-to-day life of a public servant on a local level. Yes,
I believe it is a fair assertion to say that as a public school teacher, I am not involved in any private equity firms.
But I guess what I'd love to learn a little bit more about is before you became a teacher, before you ran for office, tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Tell me about 10-year-old Bradley. Did he always want to be a public school teacher? Did he always have political aspirations?
If you had asked 10-year-old Bradley what he was going to be a paleontologist.
A paleontologist?
Oh, yeah, no, it's purely devoted. And then I realized that I didn't like puzzles.
It involves puzzles.
Yeah, but you got to put things back together. Exactly.
Most kids just want to be dinosaurs. I like that you just wanted to study the dinosaurs.
Correct. That's fair. I have a youngest who very much, I think, would enjoy the opportunity to be a dinosaur. But no, so yeah, no, 10-year-old Bradley would never have told you he was going to be interested in politics someday. 10-year-old Bradley probably wouldn't even know he was going to be a civics teacher. That came later. That came when I figured out that something that I was really good at was helping others to be their best selves. As a member of the track team, I was spending a lot of time mentoring younger athletes and things like that. And that's where I figured out, okay, maybe this is the route. Maybe my route is serving my community by helping other people to be the absolute best versions of themselves and to unlock their potential. And then that just sort of naturally combined in with U.S. history, civics, social studies as a place where I could bring all those varied interests together in a way that would have real impact on the world that we all live in.
Well, what really interests me is that it sounds like you're not content just with teaching about civics, but you're actually demonstrating it and trying to affect civics as well. I'm not sure if that was part of your pitch.
For years, I used to tell my students in the civics classroom, if you look at some of the writings of the framers, some of the writings of the people who are first running for political office, like when they run for political office, they don't run the way that we think about it. They're not out there giving speeches. They're not out there campaigning. They're not out there trying to convince you to vote for them. They're doing good things in their community. Other people are taking notice. And then those people are saying, here's the wonderful things this person is doing. So what this has always meant to me is that there's a certain level of desire that our politicians were meant to serve because their community wanted them to serve, not just out of their own desire. And a few years ago in Pennridge, our school board got taken over by people who were doing active damage to children's education. And I had shown up, started speaking out, and our community said, hey, we think you're the voice that maybe can represent this. And I'm like, well, I guess I have to put my money where my mouth is. I've been telling people for years that it's supposed to be about your community wanting you to serve, and here's my community asking. So that's really where then I launched into this. Is it was from the perspective of my community needed help. Things were bad, and I had a voice that could make things better.
Absolutely. Now, I'm not going to go into full-on sermon mode here, but I can't help but think about how in the Bible, we are told about how Moses actually, part of what made him a great leader, arguably, is that he did not want to be a leader. Yeah. It's that he was tapped on the shoulder by God, and he actually tries to get away from doing it. But I think that's always a good thing when someone is, I get worried about this myself, is attempting to brand themselves as a leader. That gives me pause and concern. But when it's organic and comes from the grassroots and the people choose someone, the whole point is to represent the people. So you want to make sure that it's public will that's motivating it, not self-aggrandization. Yeah. Now, okay, because I brought up religion, I have to mention...
Always fun.
It's always fun. Yes, of course. So I got a kick out of it. You're not wearing it today, but I know that you have your BMG pin as well, which the acronym for your name, Bradley Merkl-Gump, is BMG. I got a kick out of this. Only a few of the listeners will probably know there is a huge rabbinical seminary that is in Lakewood, New Jersey called Pennridge School Board, and the acronym is BMG. So when I saw you wearing that pin, I thought you were like a representative of that rabbinical seminary, and I was very confused for a moment. But I love the acronym.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to sell anybody 12 CDs for $1 either, so.
But you have a little bit of a religious background, I think, with the Quakers, if I'm not mistaken.
So I attended a Quaker school in my early education for many years. It was a really unique way to explore, who you are and to develop your sense of self. And that was a really interesting exposure. It led to me having a deep understanding of very different faiths. Quakers have always had the belief that there's that of God in all people. And so that allowed us the exploration of understanding how do other faiths function? Why do they make the choices that they do? And having a deep respect for people's rights to belong to their religions.
So what's a Quaker service like?
Quaker service is really interesting. It's especially in this area in what's called Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. It's definitely not what most of us are used to when we think about a religious service. In most religious services, you have somebody who is standing up in front of the group, telling them the story, giving them the lecture. In Quaker service, it's much more about self-exploration. You come into a room, the room gets grounded in silence, and you listen in basically silent prayer or silent meditation, whatever you might want to call it, for God to deliver the messages that you need to hear in your life. And if you feel so moved, you might stand and share those messages that you've received. I've told my wife for years, I'm like, I don't care what religious practices you choose to use for me someday when I might pass. But I would ask that we take some elements of the Quaker funeral service, which is you bring everyone who is in attendance into that room, and then they have the opportunity, if they feel moved, to share what that person's life meant to them, to share the ways in which that person affected them, to share the ways in which that person has helped to make their life and their world better. And I've always found that I've been to a few of them, and it's a beautiful way to celebrate the life of someone who has passed.
Mm-hmm. So something that I can understand from your philosophy, and tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, is that you have an appreciation for religion, for spirituality. At the same time, you're not the kind of person, I think, who wants to impose his ideology on anyone else. In fact, actually, I want to read an excerpt from your campaign website, and I'd love for you to unpack this for us. Okay, here's the open quote. In 2023, Bradley became a voice for his community by running for school board. Pennridge School District, Bradley's alma mater, and where his children go to school, have been taken over by extremists. They banned books, wrote policies targeting vulnerable kids, and even hired a political consultant to rewrite curriculum against an outpouring of parent and staff objections. I feel like we need some more specifics on this.
That is fair. A lot of people, I think, at this point are aware of some of the things that happened where I'm from in Pennridge. They had hired a curriculum consultant who had basically gotten rid of 19th century American history because it made them feel uncomfortable.
This is the critical race theory discussion?
No, I mean, the school was definitely not engaged in any form of critical race theory. It was just they cut the Civil War and they cut the period of Reconstruction from the curriculum.
Wait, so what are you studying then?
Exactly.
Oh.
They promised they would be back at some point, but they had never actually developed sort of that replacement. They had replaced that 9th grade course where it had happened with something that looked very different, more like a selected topics course.
So wait a minute, what happened? So you study 1776, the Revolutionary War,
and then question marks, yeah.
Then some question marks, and where's it pick up? World War I?
They sort of bounced around to different constitutional topics, became sort of their way of delving into that and keeping students away from the impact of what had happened in history. It sort of became the byproduct of that.
That confuses me.
It confused everyone. That's why we showed up and we spoke out, and why there was an outpouring of support from teachers and staff and community members about this is not the education we want for our kids. American history is supposed to be honest about what happened. It's supposed to give us an idea of how our country has changed and shifted and developed over time.
Right. So I'm definitely sympathetic to that. And I understand that you disagree with what the changes were, or the attempted changes. But can you help me understand just what was the argument? Most people don't just wake up in the morning and say, I'd love to remove a whole period of history from the curriculum. What was the motivation behind that, to your understanding?
To my understanding, that their motivation was that they wanted something that would be more reflective of conservative values. They were at the same time completely rewriting the English curriculum. They were at the time completely rewriting the social studies curriculum. They attempted to actually change that curriculum on the first day of school teachers showed up.
Oh my gosh.
Had not seen the curriculum before, and we're told after day one, all right, you're now teaching this.
So you're learning it for the first time, just like the students are.
Correct. Yeah, it's tough to be a teacher and build the plane as you're flying it.
That's a good metaphor. But what I want to get to is, book banning. This is just one data point in a broader national conversation about how we teach history and what materials are appropriate for children. Yeah. So I want to just, can I push back a little bit?
Of course,
right?
Please. That's 3/4 of the fun of something like this.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. I mean, obviously we are planning on having some folks on the more conservative side who will be on the podcast as well. I think just because right now where we are locally, it's all Democrat primaries. That's where all the fun and action is. So that's, to the listeners who are wondering, that's why it's skewing in that direction. As we get to the general, we'll be more balanced. But what I'm curious is there has to be some kind of parameter as to what can be exposed to a child in a classroom. So this is kind of a conservative talking point. I think there is truth to it. Maybe they take it to a certain extreme, but I think it's worth engaging with, which is adult content. We could all agree adult content is for, well, maybe it's not for adults either, but it's up to the discretion of adults. Children should not be exposed to adult content. The issue I'm noticing as a parent and just somebody, regular Joe in society, is that the goalposts over adult content, what constitutes adult content, has shifted over the past number of decades. Every decade, or even in less than a decade, like half a decade, the goalposts shift again to allow things that we would never have thought about, even for adults to be engaging with publicly. The thing that they generally point to is the drag queen story hour in a library with children, and you have a man who's, dressing up as a woman, and not just a woman, but in a very sexually provocative kind of way. And that's, something that they generally will point to and say, how is it okay for us to expose our children to that? Now, I know that's a lot different than, do I expose my child to a piece of, English literature that has something suggestive in there? But I'm curious, as an educator, knowing that there are lines, how do you go about drawing the line between what is appropriate and what's not appropriate for children, while at the same time not censoring material unnecessarily? I know that was a long-winded question, but I wanted to create a framework for the conversation.
I understand. So, I mean, part of what, when you referenced the book banning that was going on in Pennridge, a big part of the problem was that rather than having that conversation, rather than having an upfront and honest conversation of community values and what should be in school and what is developmentally appropriate and, those types of topics, what happened was a shadow book ban. So rather than deal with that, the board ordered, without public notification, a large number of books to be checked out of the library.
And what kind of books were they checking out?
Some of them were classic literature, like Beloved, and some of them were more modern titles and things like that. And specifically, they had sort of pulled from a list that had been published by a group called Moms for Liberty as we want these books gone.
I've heard of them, yeah.
A lot of people have at this point. They made a lot of noise. Rather than go through process, rather than have transparency in that discussion, what they did was they had the superintendent go and remove those books from the library. No notification, no challenges from the community itself. Just quietly, those books are disappeared.
Right. So your objection is on methodological grounds.
Very much so. I mean, what we ended up doing it in Pennridge as a solution to that is, what we have created is a transparent process in which there are multiple stakeholders involved who are making the determination, not based on playing a political game, not based on what are the politics of the day, but rather what is developmentally appropriate for the students in our schools. Any community member who has an issue can bring a challenge. And then our librarians, our teachers, our curriculum directors and our superintendent get to weigh in on those decisions in a way that gives a fundamental report of here's what was there, here's the decision that was made, here's why that decision was made about that book. And there is the occasional book that you're like, yeah, that might not have been appropriate to have in a library. But for the most part, what you're finding is there's a really good reason why sometimes those books are in a library. I mean, one that's gotten a lot of targeting is Toni Morrison's Beloved, right? It's a piece of classic literature. No, it's not in your elementary schools. It's not in your middle schools. It is in your high schools because they have AP literature classes, which are college-level lit classes that would be expected to be exposed to a book like that are being taken by children who are 17 and 18 years old,
right, on
the cusp of adulthood. As per how do I navigate that as somebody who has had a long life of teaching history, I have always told my students that my goal is to be as honest with them about what happened in our nation's past as I can. When I am going to remove something, I'm going to tell them why, and I'm going to tell them that we're not discussing it. I mean, for me, one of the big ones is we teach Reconstruction, right? In many curriculums now across the United States. It's not something that we necessarily used to touch on as much because the Civil War would take up that huge amount of time and then you never quite got to it. And
so you kind of just skipped over the post-war discussion?
In a lot of curriculums for a large number of years, you sort of skipped over that period of time. And we've been doing a lot to make sure that, because that's a really fundamental understanding.
Well, I think there's
how America got here.
I mean, I think there's a really interesting conversation about what do you do with the Confederates afterwards and the Confederate leadership.
Yep.
Is there amnesty or is there not amnesty? And this could be very relevant for other forms of potential, disagreement and treason. So you saying that traditionally we would skip over the
traditionally for many years in school curriculums, you got, and then they put Humpty Bump Dumpty back together again and have fun next year in your next social studies course. But we've been doing a lot to try and bring that back in social studies. And a major part of that discussion for me and why I bring it up as an example is I tell my students, I will never show you images of lynching. And I won't show you those images because most of those images were designed to glorify the person doing it. I'm going to talk about that it happened. We're going to discuss that it happened, but I'm not going to publicly show you that image.
I think that's important. Regardless, I think there's a very reasonable debate about where to draw the line as to what is appropriate for what age groups. And there isn't always a clear answer. There's middle ground, there's gray area. But I like your approach that you're willing to be transparent, treat your students as adults, explain to them why you're not sharing what you're not sharing. And that probably gives them more trust in the process that way.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Or they're just like, a bunch of kids and are like, I couldn't care less. As long as it's on the test, I don't care.
That is fair.
But okay, so when you're not teaching, by the way, and you're not campaigning and you have maybe some time to wind down a little bit, what do you like to do with your free time?
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough question because I'm really not sometimes sure what that free time thing is anymore. Most of my career has been dominated by long working hours. I mean, I one of my first years out of college, I think I had 10 W-2s from all of the jobs that I had to cobble together to make ends meet. I once had the title of After School Program Director, Alumni Relations Coordinator, Advancement Assistant, Admissions Assistant, Full-Time Substitute Coordinator, Track Coach, and Athletic Director. All is just one job. It hasn't been until quite recently that I had free time, and then people went, hey, we'd like you to serve our community. Bunch of things that I've gotten into. When I had time, I would be a gamer on video games. Me and my friends play a lot of board games, collectible trading card games.
Yeah,
what
kind of board games? I'm curious. Do you do any like Dungeons and Dragons kind of games, tabletop RPGs?
We have played a lot of I have a friend who's very into super involved board games, and he will have.
I did the whole Gloomhaven campaign, so
Okay, so you understand.
I understand.
You know the type I'm talking about.
I mean, my friend was the guy who was really running the entire game, and I would just come along for the ride. So I'm not like the genius who read the whole rule book.
Yeah, so you and I are in the same boat on that. I show up to this good friend's game night. I'm like, okay, so you've learned the rules, and you'll explain them to me, and we will learn as we play.
Yes.
I've also spent when I was young, I was very into Magic, the Gathering. As I got older, that sort of faded, but then as an after-school program director, it made a resurfacing.
Are the kids playing Magic the Gathering?
Oh yeah,
really?
They are.
Wow, because I mean, in my youth was kind of the Magic and very beginning of the Yu-Gi-Oh era, and I don't even know what happened to Yu-Gi-Oh. It's like link summoning, all these weird mechanisms. I'm becoming I feel like a boomer at this point. I'm like, back in my day, we just sacrificed and summoned, and that was it. And many of our listeners have no idea what I'm talking about, so I won't harbor on that, but I appreciate.
I find that all of those ebb and flow in really interesting ways. I mean, my own children, I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they have, they're collecting as many of the different trading cards games as they can. They're very into Pokemon. They've both gotten into Magic the Gathering because there was a cute little animal set a few years ago that they got very into.
I mean, you can make whole decks of just cats or dogs.
Oh yeah, no, 100. For my youngest, it was mice. And for my eldest, it was otters.
Okay. So what color element do you go for your decks? I was always very simple. I just went with the color black, which represents death, and then you just kind of use death touch, and then you beat everybody right away. I was a very cheap player, but anyway, so that's this is good to get to know a little bit more about you. I think I'll challenge you to a Magic the Gathering game sometime.
That sounds great.
Maybe we could settle our politics that way. Wouldn't that be great if we just had a Magic the Gathering duel and whoever won, and you could save your time on all the campaigning?
I mean, unfortunately, with the expense of some of those cards, I feel like that actually is
that's more
really
expensive than the campaign.
That might be actually apropos to politics sometimes at the minute.
Well, we'll see how Mark Pinsley, who you're running against in the primary, and Jared Coleman, should you win the primary in the general, we'll see if they want to take you up on the challenge of Magic the Gathering. But actually, that leads me to my next question, which is, I want to understand, I think I have a sense of how you would distinguish yourself from the current Senator, Jared Coleman. I mean, you could certainly tell us a little bit more about that. And I think what would be helpful for listeners with the primary coming up on May 19th, right? May 19th. Mm-hmm. So Mark Pinsley's running in it for the Democrat nomination. You're running for the Democrat nomination. In affirmative terms, how would you distinguish what you're trying to offer that makes your platform unique?
What I'm trying to offer is really the lived experience, right? Like this is not hypothetical to me. This is real world issues that are affecting my family. Mm-hmm. This is real world issues where as a teacher, I watch kids come to school without enough to eat. There's a teacher or several teachers that I know across the area who have entire cabinets filled with snacks to make sure that they have food for the students who are in their classroom to eat. Wow. Who might not have enough on their own. I know of a number of students where we've taken up collections to make sure that they have clean clothes, to make sure that they have the things that we can help with as teachers to help them afford. And that's not a reality that I want for anybody living in our state. So this is the real world impact of things and what we see going on as a teacher, and it needs to be fixed, and it needs to have somebody who really is absolutely living that existence, mm-hmm. who understands that these issues need to be solved yesterday.
Right. And that's a very compelling case. Now, is there any way in general that you would distinguish yourself on any issues from the Democrat Party, or for the most part, would you say you're kind of lockstep in line with the policy positions?
That's an interesting. I mean, it is a tough one, but I think that
I ask it to all political.
No, I know. I got that. No. Here's my reality, and it's got, I think, less to do with policy and more to do with philosophy. Mm-hmm. I am somebody who understands what is the key importance of reaching across the aisle, right? Areas like this, we need to work together to get things done. We need to involve all stakeholders. We need to make sure that everyone's voice, while we might not all get everything that we want all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That at the very least, everyone here is heard in the process of how we are trying to get things done. So I recognize that, I mean, especially in a seat like the Senate District 16 here, like that is the type of mentality that you need, is somebody who is going to build coalitions, somebody who is going to bring people together, somebody who is going to understand that, yeah, life is hard for me. It's also hard for the guys on the other side of the aisle. And how do we come together to solve those issues for everybody? Because that's the reality, is that we are solving the problems that need to be fixed for every single person in this state, not just some, not just those that agree with us.
You strike me as being idealistic without being an ideologue at the same time, and maybe you could put that on the branding.
It's a little long for a slogan.
Yeah, you'll put it into AI. You'll figure it out. But I think what you're saying is, look, you have your principles, you have your positions, but you understand that it's not necessarily about making a whole splash. You're willing to reach across the aisle in order to get things done.
I mean, I put it down to philosophy versus pragmatism, right?
Yeah.
Like I teach every year the founding of our nation. We go into sort of the conflict that exists between Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, right? Thomas Jefferson comes from wealth. He can be consistently about high-minded principles because he doesn't need to worry about the practical reality of it. Like, he wants an agrarian republic. He wants strict construction of the Constitution all the time until he becomes president and he goes against that. But that's a whole nother story. On the other hand, Alexander Hamilton is there trying to figure out, and he comes from poverty. He comes from having to make something of himself for the first time. And his...
I did watch the musical.
Excellent. Well done.
But you're already telling me things I don't know from there.
But for him, it's about, how do we get things done for people? How do we do what works, as opposed to, philosophy is our starting point, right? It gives us beautiful ideals that we try to uphold and we try to live up to. But we also recognize that that's difficult. And that when you're trying to be a purist all the time, you might not get to the solution that people really need. And so for me, that's really what it comes down to, is how do we do what works to make people's lives better?
Right. And since it sounds like you are amenable to coalition building and trying to find areas for bipartisan partnership for the constituency, I'm curious, and this is what I asked everybody in a political position who comes on, is there anything looking across the aisle at the Republicans that you admire / you think the Democrat Party could be learning from?
One of the things that I have found very impressive in a lot of politics is weirdly enough, it comes down to, I think, branding. I know that political parties always suffer from identity issues, but I mean the Republican Party has done a lot of really good job coming up with catchy slogans in the past few years.
You're thinking of the Super Bowl ad that the Trump administration used. I think it went something like, she is for they, them, he is for you, something along those lines.
It's which a very catchy slogan.
It's exactly. So even, just from a strictly marketing standpoint, it was catchy. People remembered it, whether they liked it or not, but it was good marketing from a marketing standpoint. Ideology, we could discuss at another time.
Oh, ideology we could discuss all day if you wanted, but I'm not sure the podcast has enough time for it.
Absolutely. So, and that brings me to my final question, which is, as a teacher of history and civics, you well know that the 250th anniversary of the United States of America is right around the corner. So, as a teacher, as a political candidate, as a citizen, what does that mean to you?
What that means to me, I think, is the beauty of how far we've come. When we look at the principles of the revolution and things that are enshrined in our Declaration of Independence and in our Constitution, one of the things that we talk about is, and that's important to acknowledge, is when we make this statement of we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are lofty ideals. They're hard things to live up to. It's really easy to want them for me. It's really easy to want those things for myself. It's sometimes where we have difficulty is remembering that also has to apply to everybody else. And the beauty of that is that we as a nation, I think, are in a constant state of becoming. We are in a constant state of striving for beautiful ideals that make this world better, that inspired democracy across the world in that spark that was lit in the revolution. And that beauty of how we each day make that little attempt to get a little bit closer to those ideals tomorrow than we were today.
Well said. Mr. Bradley Merkl-Gump, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you joining me as I walk through the valley. Thank you for joining me as I walk through the valley. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and subscribe to our show. If you have questions or would like to book a live recording or have a speaking request, please email rabbi@sonsofisrael.net. This is Moshe Kurtz. I look forward to having you join me next time as I walk through the valley.